Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge Week 17 Waiver Wire. My name is Steve. Just a quick heads up, the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Indianapolis game, the Monday Night Football game, has not occurred yet, and so there will be some asterisks below that I will come back in the comments and fill in any updates as far as the waiver wire rankings go after the game. And the other thing is that I am looking at players who are less than 50% owned on ESPN. That is my general guideline. Now, before we get into the waiver wires, I do want to just quick look at any playoff implications on the Week 17 fantasy football field because, sometimes players may not be playing if the teams don't need to win or whatnot. So I just wanted to touch base on that. And as far as the AFC goes, aside from Cleveland, Indianapolis, Denver, and Houston, who are all eliminated from the playoffs, all the other teams are still fighting for something. Now, I would like to hop right on down here to Tennessee because actually they aren't really fighting. They're fighting for something very unrealistically happening or something that probably won't happen this week. So they may decide that there's not enough on the line this week based on what I know about the playoff picture that Henry could be sitting. So there is one instance where that was not something that was immediately obvious to me. I haven't been able to find any articles that have fully broken down all of the playoff scenarios so far. So I looked at the playoff pictures and, kind of come up to my own observations here. So hopefully I haven't missed anything major. And if anything comes up during the week or whatnot, obviously I will try to cover that as I talk about players in the rankings or in the Saturday special. And, those are things to pay attention to. But let's just get right into this. For the AFC, as far as Cleveland goes, the one player I would have the most concern about would be Nick Chubb. Maybe they want to lighten the load on him, make sure he doesn't get injured here down the stretch at the end of the season with nothing on the line. That's possible, but it would be hard without any kind of news, and that's going to be the general thing this week is pay attention to the news, to go out there and just bench Nick Chubb for anybody, that's for sure. Moving on to Indianapolis here, there are potential coaching careers that guys have on the line or are trying to bolster here down the stretch for Indianapolis that might give them reason to fight. And also, they haven't had a very good season, so a lot of the players are probably still trying to hit their dollar incentives. So all the more reason for guys to be going out there and playing for Indianapolis, in my opinion. Those incentives have a lot to do with when players sit or not too at the end of the year. As far as Denver goes, I did write this just prior to Nathaniel Hackett getting fired. So I was like, coaching careers, people want to get some stuff on the paper here, maybe show that, hey, we figured it out how to make Russell Wilson work. Well, that's not so much the case. I do think that Russell Wilson will continue to play. I think this offense, all the players are going to continue to try to improve, so that way they have something to go into next season with, as well as same situation as Indianapolis. A lot of incentives that players may want to hit down the stretch if they're within range of hitting them. So we'll pay attention to the news on that one. Then as far as Houston goes, I can't imagine. Hopefully you're not relying on anybody fantasy relevant for Houston anyways, and they're also a team that's going to try to improve here down the stretch for some of their younger players. And that brings us to the NFC playoff picture. And aside from the Los Angeles Rams, Atlanta Falcons, Arizona Cardinals, Chicago Bears, who are all mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, all other teams in the NFC are still fighting for something. However, San Francisco and Dallas may not necessarily be fighting for much or something this week. So as far as Dallas goes, they actually are. They play on Thursday, so they are going to have to be taking this game seriously because there's an outside chance at them winning the division, and even a bigger chance, or also an outside chance, not a bigger chance, of them getting the number one seed and getting that bye. So especially since they're playing on Thursday, no other games will be determined prior to that. They have to play like their competition may end up losing their games, Minnesota and Philly, to give them that chance at that number one seed bye. As far as San Francisco goes, they play after Philadelphia plays, and so if Philadelphia wins their game, then San Francisco is really only going to be playing for seeding and quarterback development at that point, as they will no longer be able to catch up with Philadelphia for that number one seed, as far as I could tell. And but the one thing, they have aspirations for a Super Bowl this season, and they're rocking out Brock Purdy. So I'm sure they want him to continue to develop with the guys that he's going to be playing with. The only player who I could see, and we already saw this last week, I believe, them limiting down the stretch here would be Christian McCaffrey, because I do believe that they have locked up the 3rd seed at least, which is not too bad at all. And so there just might not be, probably not enough for them to really be playing for here, where they're going to go out and make Christian McCaffrey a workhorse, and much rather him healthy for the playoffs. And we know how important, he is the reason that they may be able to make it to the Super Bowl ultimately. So, some concerns for McCaffrey as far as fantasy football goes this coming week. We'll listen to all the news and try and gather as much facts as we can, because I'm a McCaffrey owner, so I would rather not have to sit him. And it's unlikely I will, but who knows? Because even in a limited amount of touches, he could have a big game. Then as far as those teams who are out of the playoffs, Justin Fields for Chicago. I think he's chasing a quarterback rushing record, if I recall correctly, so you're probably going to want to get that at the very least, but I would have some concerns as he's going to be finishing out games. He's been really awfully beat up this season, don't have a great offensive line. Don't think that they want him to get injured here at the end of the year and potentially miss time next season. Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned that he may be starting games and sitting by halftime or something like that. It's very much possible, but he is also young and you want to continue to develop him, so I'm sure he'll be starting. And as far as Arizona goes, there are coaches and players, I'm sure, that are all fighting for their futures at the very least for Arizona, so I expect them to mostly start to continue to be playing. Hopefully McCoy can come back this week. That would be nice for some fantasy owners of those players, but there might be some sort of limitation towards the end of the games for some of the D-Hops and Marquise Browns of the world. Very possible. As far as the Rams go, Sean McVay is far too competitive to be throwing anything. They've pretty much got like their second unit guys in all over around their team, and Cam Akers is going to continue to get the start, I'm sure. So he's really him and Baker Mayfield are the only two that you would, I believe, want to be thinking about playing in fantasy at all. And I think that they'll continue to play full-time. So I'm not too concerned about that. And then as far as Atlanta goes, they have all young players. It's a team that's developing, and there's a lot of player development that is very important for these final 2 games. So I don't see Atlanta, changing anything as far as how they've been playing. They're going to continue to play those guys and play hard. And so that is going to bring us to the waiver wires and for the quarterbacks. So I have a choice here. I could do the quarterbacks or the tight ends prior to when the waiver wires run. Maybe I could get them both out, but probably not. So prior to when they run today, tomorrow, whenever you're seeing this on Tuesday. So if you have a preference, let me know, because tight ends are pretty ugly. So I don't know if people would want to see that. But here is what I think the quarterbacks will end up looking like as far as being ranked this coming week. Obviously, we don't have to worry about going into the future. So it's all about this next week's matchup. And I have these 3, Gardner Minshew, Brock Purdy, and Mike White, up on a tier of their own. So Gardner Minshew is a risky one here, though, especially for being up top. Going up against New Orleans, solid enough matchup. And he has the best weapons out of the group. Well, he's the most experienced combination with the best weapons, with a good fantasy-friendly system there in Philadelphia for fantasy points. And so if Gardner Minshew were to be starting, that'd be great, but Jalen Hurts is going to be pushing to come back, because this game does now matter since they lost last week for the Eagles. So if you're picking up a guy and you need that to be your starter this week, then you may want to either pick up 2 or, avoid Gardner Minshew in case. Otherwise, I do like him. I probably have him ranked above these 2, I would think. So Brock Purdy going up against Las Vegas, really good matchup, really good, system for quarterbacks and all that. Just like last week, you have some faith. Even though he may not have a lot of yards or anything, he'll at least get some opportunities to potentially end up throwing touchdowns and have a decent week. Then Mike White going up against Seattle. Gotta like that. These 2 are neck and neck for me. I don't know which one will be projected higher. But Mike White has been cleared to play this coming week, so it looks all but for certain that he'll be there. And that also impacted some rankings that I had. So decent options here for quarterback streaming this week. Then some guys who there's less confidence in, but have some decent enough matchups and or have performed pretty decently lately that you could go with if you have to, especially in a deeper league for quarterbacks. So Mac Jones, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield going up against Miami, Tampa Bay, Los Angeles Chargers, respectively. All some guys who should be ranked fairly well this week. Then Andy Dalton going up against Philadelphia, really good upside, but Philadelphia's defense is, scary most weeks. but also offers something like what we saw last week, where you could have a big day against them just because their offense is going to be putting up points. And so with that, in combination with the concerns about Taysom Hill taking away some opportunities from Andy Dalton, a little riskier for Andy Dalton to take advantage of this kind of matchup, but the potential is there. So now let's move on to the running back waiver wires, which, as you can see, is nice and small. I did try to keep these as tight as I could over the past few weeks, kind of been shrinking them down. So we're on to the running backs. These are the only guys that I believe, that are out there and available that you would realistically be willing to throw out there this week, and it gets iffy already. But the top two, James Cook, going up against Cincinnati, good upside to that. They are good against the run, but the style and the plays that James Cook gets out there on are not your traditional going, north and south type plays, and he has the receiving ability on top of that. So the upside is really, really high for James Cook. And if you want to take a shot at it, that's great, but there is a risky downside to it. He is in a shared backfield with Singletary, and could that swing towards Singletary this coming week? Again, who knows for sure. Whereas Tyler Algier, I think it's been pretty obvious at this point the amount he's going to get the bulk share, the lion's share of the backfield work going up against Arizona, so it's going to be a good matchup and everything for him. So he is your safer pick out of these two, in my opinion, but doesn't offer the same upside in the championship game that you might want to shoot for. Both of them very good options for the waiver wire this week. Then Zach Moss / Deion Jackson. This is obviously going to depend on tonight's game. They could go anywhere from pretty much not making this list to being up here, and my expectation is that one of them will, hopefully be the obvious guy after tonight's game, in which case that guy, I would think, will probably end up being ranked ahead of Chuba Hubbard and Gus Edwards going up against New York Giants. It's a good matchup for running backs, so we'll see how that all turns out this week, and that's something that I would come back in the comments and fill in later after the game tonight. Then Chuba Hubbard going up against Tampa Bay, Gus Edwards going up against Pittsburgh remain pieces I don't necessarily want to rely on, but at least the upside is there, as we saw just last week. And they didn't move at all in my rankings. That's how I had them last week, too. Now on to the wide receivers, and I have one tier here, starting off with DJ Shark going up against Chicago. We've all seen a lot of games this season that he's been active and healthy. He's done quite well, so it has a good upside, and it's a good matchup. Then for Romeo Doubs, this will be a little bit reliant upon Christian Watson. Not even a little bit. This is pretty heavily reliant upon the health of Christian Watson. If Christian Watson is playing and fine, I don't think I want to rely on Romeo Doubs in the championship game. However, if he's out and Romeo's going to be out there a lot of the time going up against Minnesota, it's a really good matchup. Should be fantasy friendly, and pretty great opportunity for Romeo in that situation to help you win a championship. A little risky, but good one. Then Jahan Dotson going up against Cleveland. Not the best matchup in the world, but I'll say it like this. These coming to Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins individually, I like each of them a little bit more than Dotson. However, I only think, the chances of each of them, I guess, doing better, I'm concerned about which one it's going to be next week, okay? That's just how it goes. And so I feel a little bit safer with Jahan Dotson is all it is. But Darius Slayton offers you all of the upside in the world. Going up against Indianapolis, so not really a great matchup for these guys. But that's why I have Darius Slayton ahead of Isaiah Hodgins yet. However, Isaiah Hodgins is your safer pick out of the two between Darius Slayton and him. It depends on your matchup. Are you way outmanned and having to, pick up a waiver wire option, and these are the guys you're looking at? Well, then you go with Darius Slayton. But are you the better team? Then maybe go with Isaiah Hodgins and take that little safety net there. Would be my advice. Now, on to the rest of the wide receivers. I have Greg Dortch up top going up against Atlanta. Just a little bit of a limitation on the upside, I think, for Greg Dortch going up against Atlanta. And definitely more of a full PPR compared to a non-PPR type guy, better in that situation. But Atlanta, I expect to control the clock pretty well against Arizona. And so just a limited amount of opportunities in that offense is my expectation next week. Then with Mike White coming back, one of these guys should be good. And I think it would be Corey Davis. It very well could be Elijah Moore. I don't think we've really seen Mike White with both of them on the field healthy for a full game, at least maybe outside of one game is potentially how it's been. And so my major concern is going to be, it's similar to the Darius Slayton Isaiah Hodgins concern, is which one is it? I don't really want to rely on having to guess which one it is. Elijah Moore is going to give you that bigger upside, that Darius Slayton-esque high upside, but Corey Davis would be more of a full PPR kind of guy, and who knows if those who knows if that expectation would be coming through anyways, going up against Seattle. Just a few too many question marks about how that'll all be implemented for me to feel super safe with that. Then, though, Terrace Marshall Jr. going up against Tampa Bay just has an upside big play ability for him that could always come true for you. Rashid Shaheed, very similar, going up against Philadelphia. Tougher matchup, but I think a little bit higher upside than Terrace Marshall Jr. too. Very close there. Weather might be like a deciding factor between those two if we were deciding between them. Then Paris Campbell going up against the New York Giants, and Alec Pierce going up against the New York Giants. This obviously has some reliance on what the outcome is and the Monday Night Football game, as far as any kind of confidence in them, whether they even make this list in the end of the day, or if they were to move up, one of them were to move up. It's tough to tell between those two. So you can see I have sets of guys here in situations where it's like, which one is it? And that's how I have them ultimately ranked. And then a New England receiver next week outside of Jacoby Myers. Maybe it will be Jacoby Myers and no other receiver. Should have a good day going up against Miami. Which one is it? I don't know. You take your pick which one you like the most. So hopefully you're not having to try to make that decision. And that brings us to the tight end waiver wires. Super small this week. So once again, if you want me to do tight ends over quarterbacks, let me know in the comments. And I can make sure to get a tight ends ranking video out prior to the any decisions that need to be made for the waiver wire tomorrow on Tuesday. But as far as right now, don't really like too many of the outside options. These are the only guys who I would hopefully have to be choosing from for streaming this week in the event that you need to find someone. Taysom Hill going up against Philadelphia. Obviously, a lot of upside there going up against Philadelphia, similar for Juwan Johnson, but Taysom Hill could have a similar amount of work as last week or something like that. We know that there's a nice upside there. I think that's a matchup that they could definitely utilize Taysom again in. Then Hayden Hurst going up against Buffalo. Really, really high upside there for Buffalo. He is someone that's been injured for a couple of weeks, so if you were to be playing Hayden Hurst, just pay attention to the news. And Tyler Conklin getting Mike White back going up against Seattle. It's a good matchup for tight ends. Unfortunately, it hasn't always been Tyler Conklin that's ended up getting the touchdowns with Mike White. Sometimes it's been CJ Uzama, but the potential at the tight end position, Mike White's usually been getting some decent fantasy points most weeks to the tight ends. And so that's the tight ends. That's how I end it. All right, that is the waiver wires. You take care, all. Peace out. Good luck with your Monday night games, and we'll be in touch throughout this week with my rankings and everything.